This is a space where we have conversations centered around drawing you out of survival mode, helping you heal emotionally, and ultimately stepping into the life that you were meant to live, the life that God designed for you to live. I'm Jen Weir, and I am the founder and builder of the Healing Havens, which is just a broader picture of what I just mentioned. Today's topic is opening up a conversation around Gen X. It's a discussion that has been talked about on various platforms. We've joked about it. We have trauma bonded through flexing our trauma of things like that. And as I've studied this generation, my generation, over the last several years, I realize this is truly a forgotten generation. And as we joke about that and think that it's funny, the challenge is that there's 65 million people that that generation represents, and that generation has the highest suicide rate out of all the other generations. I find that alarming and telling. And so, my goal of doing this series on Gen X is not to just join my voice with others about flexing our trauma, talking about drinking out of the hose, and reminiscing about the absurd colors we used to wear. My goal is to help us all come out of survival mode, to acknowledge areas that needed healing, and ultimately to start walking and thriving in the way that we were designed. I am a writer before I am a video vlogger, maker, whatever. So I have already written about this over on my blog, thehealinghavens.com. You can find a link below. So I am pretty much just going to spend our time together reading to you from my blog. This is like a bedtime story. So um, our first portion, the discussion, is why Gen X parents struggle with disrespect. The other day, this came up as I was shopping with my daughter for her summer gear. And I'm already not wanting to be there because it's rainy, because it's New England and it's May. And shopping in person is not my favorite. It's just pretty much the crap everywhere I see. It's not good. And anyway, 2020 did a number on indoor shopping. So I'm already feeling a ways. And we're standing in line and waiting for the next person to call us. And she says, what did I say here? That's right. She's like this. I'll take you now. Okay. And that may not seem like a big deal, especially because I'm already feeling salty about the whole situation. But I'm used to like, next customer, please, or even the AI voice that says, now serving at counter five. Actually, maybe I'm thinking of the RMV. But in any case, it's usually a much more pleasant experience. And there's this exchange of like, hi, how are you today? Da 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 da. Did you find everything? I don't know. I just like what I like, right? When I'm shopping in person. There was none of that. There was a lot of eye roll energy, a lot of like throwing my clothes around, annoyed at my conversations and my questions about sales, not sales, this and that. Just, I was simply fact finding. That's all. But there was just an accusatory way about this girl. And this isn't my first experience in-person shopping, obviously. I have lived on the planet a few decades, several as it were. I've had bad customer service, but for whatever reason, this particular thing, I was like, line in the sand, we're so done here. So, as per my custom, when I have a situation like that, I always go before the Lord and go, okay, what is my problem? Literally, what is my problem? And it was nothing to be as violently opposed as I was to this, but it felt like a massive trigger that needed to be addressed. And so my conversation with Jesus went like this. Frankly, I am so daggum tired of always having to be the bigger person and kill them with kindness and be so nice and da 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 when they're complete and total buttheads to me. And let's see, did I rant and rave about other things? Yes. This is my favorite. I said to the Lord, I'm all but done with this set of kids telling me how I should treat them. And I kind of think that was probably the crux of it. Like, I have five kids, four Gen Z and one Gen Alpha. And sometimes I just get tired of hearing, Mom, you can't say that. Mom, that's not right. I'm like, you know what? I'm a grown ass woman. I should be able to say whatever I want when I want. And I understand. That's not always the way. At that moment, on that day, that's how I was feeling. And so I realized it was touching on a part of me that was still apparently raw because here's the Lord. Are you finished? Yes, yet. And I'm going, yes, totally done. Thanks for listening. Okay, I gotta go. The conversation was more than one-sided, of course. He didn't answer me. I didn't ask for anything. I moved along. But as most overthinkers do, I mused on this for a couple of days, thinking, okay, why did this bother me so much? This is so minimal. Honestly, if my kids have a bad day like that, or they sass me, I mean, we pause and have a conversation. It's a little bit easier. But going back to the title is why do Gen X parents, really Gen X people, it should really more be the title, have such a problem with disrespect? I mean, wouldn't anybody have a problem with it? Yes, but we just kind of go in shutdown, lockdown mode. And so here's the thing. I'm sure most of you now are standing up saying, yeah, damn right. She should have been nice to you, customer service, yada, yada. Or maybe some of you be like, you know what, get over yourself and move along. It's really not that big a deal. I know it didn't seem like it should be a big deal, but it did feel like a big deal. So here we are now having this whole conversation. Here's the deeper issue that I plan on addressing. So hang tight, it's about to get good. And prayerfully, this will give voice to 65 million of my closest friends and hopefully reduce that horrible statistic of the highest suicide rate of my generation or in my generation and of our country. And really, how could a revelation like this come up in just a shopping trip? It didn't. It's a subject, as I mentioned, I've been studying for years. There's a quiet conversation that is happening in all manner of areas, text threads, kitchens, therapy offices, all over America. And it's this: Gen X is exhausted, plain and simple. And Gen X parents were more than exhausted. Most of Gen X moms are in full adrenal shutdown, and many have just given up quietly. When I'm not writing, I'm coaching people. And I see this in my clients over and over. They're just tired. They're just, their bodies are just shutting down. And it's not simply because parenting is hard. And that's a mantra I've heard for far too long. Well, parenting is hard. Yeah, well, what? So is driving on 95 in Boston. And we do it anyway. But driving on the highway doesn't take me out. And so it's not about parenting. And it's not simply because culture is changing. I mean, it's always changing, it's always evolving. But because many of these Gen Xers are just trying to raise emotionally healthy children while carrying emotional wounds that they themselves were never allowed to acknowledge. The little lady helping me at the store, she was Gen Z with likely amazing parents who didn't want her growing up with a crap ton of emotional baggages. So they, like me, allowed her to be vocal in her needs and her feelings. Something 65 million of us didn't have a clue what it looked like when we were her age. We didn't have that luxury. We didn't know what it was like to be blunt, emotionally expressive. We just carried on. That collision or of carrying emotional wounds while raising and experiencing healthy children shows up nowhere faster than in the experience of what we deem to be disrespect. Hence my mental come apart. For many Gen X parents, disrespect, and really for many Gen X people in general, disrespect does not feel like a mild annoyance. It feels physically activating. It feels threatening, destabilizing, and deeply personal. Most Gen X adults were not raised in emotionally attuned homes. Lucky us, we were raised with expectations. Respect adults. Watch your mouth. Control yourself. Handle your emotions privately. Remember the don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about kind of a thing. Don't inconvenience people. Don't question authority. Don't embarrass the family. And figure it out for yourself. Many grew up in homes marked by high divorce rates, latchkey independence, and emotional stoicism. We had minimal supervision and unspoken understanding that children adapted to adults. Certainly not the other way around. We became incredibly capable. We learned how to read the room, keep space, stay useful, hide emotion, anticipate conflict, and carry responsibility far earlier than we should have. Yet capability and emotional safety are just not the same thing. An entire generation became highly functional, and we often became emotionally unsupported at the same time. And those kids are now parents or middle-aged adults living in the world, doing careers, trying to navigate life with these wounds that never got addressed. You see, most Gen X parents and people associate respect with safety. It's not about an obligation to society. Like most people would think, well, you should be respectful because you're trying to be a good citizen in this world. Like, don't be a tool. But this generation, Gen X, specifically sees it as safety. Maybe they haven't articulated as much, but when you think about it, this is what it is. So when someone respects you, you feel super safe. In unstable households, respect is often prevented. And it actually, better said, it often prevents explosions, punishment, chaos, humiliation, withdrawal, and or emotional volatility. So when a Gen Z child or young adult speaks with bluntness, emotional intensity, or like a casualness towards authority, a Gen X nervous system interprets that as danger, not simply a bad attitude. There's a marked difference. And if you have a conversation with other generations or people of other age groups, really, when it comes down to it, it's like we might say, oh, it just is a bad attitude. But people who have unhealed wounds, it becomes more of a dangerous situation. So, this is especially true for women who spent decades as adults, right? Keeping peace over functioning, anticipating and meeting everyone else's needs in her household, including the household she grew up in, by the way, and including probably her spouse's household that he grew up in. Let's just talk about that, as well as carrying emotional labor silently. A disrespectful tone can unconsciously trigger something much older. Like, for example, you meet like my little gal at the store. I might have thought you might think I would never have been able to talk like that. I mean, literally, I'm sure you've probably said that. No one would have tolerated that for me. I carried everything else without complaining. Like, why does this little person get to complain about her bad day? You probably never did. We would have been told in the workplace, that's unprofessional. Keep it to yourself. Don't do that. Customer's always right, blah, blah, blah. Which means the reaction is rarely just about the present moment. The parent is not only responding as an adult, right? The Gen X adult is not only responding as an adult. You're now responding, I'm responding, we're all responding and reacting as the ignored child, the over-responsible teenager, the emotionally unsupported young adult, and now the exhausted middle-aged person who still carries everyone. So all of those factors come in play when you're responding to disrespect. The current interaction touches decades of swallowed emotion. Just as a side note, let me ask you a question. Did you have throat issues when you were a kid? Were you ever frequently in the doctors for strep throat, tonsillitis? Did you have your tonsils removed when you were younger because of frequent throat infections? This is why. This is why. For those of you who study chakras and all that, this is your throat chakra. When it's closed down, it causes physical problems. Just a thought. So they feel so different, they being Gen Z and even now Gen Alpha. To be fair, they did not grow up in a dramatically different psychological environment. They were shaped by constant internet exposure, social media comparison, economic instability, identity, identity issues, health crisis, and so much more going on. They had their share too. It's just that these guys were encouraged to express themselves. They totally questioned authority. They are far less trusting of institutional things, government, corporations, all that kind of stuff. That's probably the wisest thing these kids do, by the way. But they were allowed to express themselves. They could name emotions, they could challenge unhealthy systems, and they could advocate for their needs, and they're championed for it. In some ways, this is absolutely progress. It's something that my husband and I worked hard towards while raising our kids. Yet I've had this bite me in my rear. I'd love to say some other things, but it came back to bite me when their emotional expression came without emotional maturity. And that can become chaos for both parties, right? Emotional honesty is not the same as wisdom. There is a difference between having a voice and weaponizing emotion. And there's a difference between healthy boundaries and treating accountability like oppression. Accountability is different than being put upon. You know what I mean? Some Gen X parents and even Gen X adults are not imagining this increase in entitlement and emotional volatility and dismissiveness that they sometimes encounter. This is a very real part of life at this moment. And aside from the emotions that we're feeling, like from when we were kids, this is kind of problematic. But many Gen Z children are also reacting to culture that told them that their feelings are central and their identity must be defended constantly. And discomfort itself is harmful. And that creates friction between generations with radically different emotional conditionings. So remember, we're just talking about why Gen X parents have a hard time with kids that are disrespectful. So there's something else at play here, and the conversation needs to happen, and society can shift and change. But here's the deeper layer that few people are willing to talk about honestly. Many Gen X parents genuinely tried to give their kids what they never had: more presence, more validation, more emotional safety, more conversation, more voice, more support. And sometimes they look around and wonder, how did I sacrifice this much and still end up feeling emotionally attacked in my own home? And then you go out and then you're attacked there. That thought alone sucks all the way around. And it carries enormous guilt. I mean, truly, right? Because we're not monsters. We want the best for our kids and we want good for ourselves too. No one ever told us that we were allowed to have good, though. That's kind of the problem. So we're tired of feeling emotionally responsible for everyone, tired of being the stable one, tired of carrying invisible labor while being told that we are emotionally unavailable, controlling, or insensitive. And underneath the exhaustion is often simply grief. Grief for the child they once were, the one who never got softness, the one who never got accommodation, never got emotional explanation, never got to fall apart publicly. God forbid. So when they watch their children, when we watch our children express emotions freely with abandon, another internal conflict can emerge. And we call this envy, not malicious envy, just plain human, like this is not fair envy. So we think they're allowed to feel things that I had to survive silently. And that can be really disorienting. So what? What needs to happen next? This conversation cannot and should not ever become Gen Z is terrible and Gen X is emotionally repressed. No, we're not going to sit here and talk about these horrible things and say, okay, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. We're not doing that. That's just too simplistic and it misses the point entirely. Gen X developed remarkable strengths like adaptability, right? We joke about it. Humor under pressure. It's literally what gets us through the day. Self-reliance and resilience and the ability to function through uncertainty. While Gen Z developed their own amazing strengths. They're emotionally aware. Their willingness to challenge dysfunctional with greater openness. And they talk about mental health way more than we ever did. They have a much lower tolerance for performative authority. I actually don't like that word performative. My son uses it all the time. I'm like, what is that even? Anyway, moving on. So we all have some great strengths, but every generation also developed, excuse me, each generation, right? When we're talking about those two, its own distortions. So the goal is not to choose one generation over the other. The goal is to have emotional maturity with a massive leaning towards helping Gen X heal. And if you're somebody who's Gen X who's saying, mind your business, I don't need to heal, just your very statement of that thought and those words tells me all I need to know. That this video is touching a nerve, that my blog are over the target. You do need to heal. There's no way you came out of your childhood unscathed. Just a thought. Parents don't need to tolerate cruelty, contempt, manipulation, or chronic disrespect in the name of emotional freedom. We just don't. We don't need to let people walk on us anymore. And younger generations don't need to return to emotional suppression in order to become healthy adults. That we see that's a terrible idea. The healthiest families will learn how to hold both self-control and respect and truth and emotion and responsibility in a delightful, gorgeous balance. Emotional healing is not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming emotionally regulated. So much so that your pain no longer controls how you treat people, and it also doesn't paint how you view people. My goal is not to help Gen X repress their kids being emotionally expressive. I mean, my gosh, most of us are almost done raising kids. I got one left who's under 18 out of 5. This is all about bringing awareness to why we all get ruffled, to say the least, and why disrespect is thrown our way and how to deal and heal from it all. We have incredible lives to live, ones that are free of emotional exhaustion and burdensome responsibilities that are not ours to carry anymore. They never were, to be honest. We grew up with parents who just, you know what, they just didn't know any better. That's just a plain and simple fact. This series on opening the conversation surrounding Gen X and healing our emotions is about healing a generation who never learned that caring for themselves was not only reasonable, but totally necessary. So I hope you take the time to stick around for more in this series, and I hope and pray that you take this seriously. As I mentioned in the beginning and in the middle and now at the end, Generation X has the highest suicide rate. And I hope that we change that by opening conversations centered around healing. Thank you for watching this episode of The Freedom Files. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.